Greetings and salutations, YouTubers. This is ZillaFan85 back today with my latest video. And for today's video, I figure just in the spirit of things, as as of the time that I will be uploading this video will only be a couple days out from, at least for me anyway, the big time movie of the year, that being Godzilla versus Kong. Yep, this is the big one. So I figured it would be an interesting idea for me to go ahead and do my own personal ranking of all the King Kong films. Of course, there are 8 of them up to date. Obviously, we'll see where Godzilla vs. Kong falls into that list once it does come out. I do plan to make a video giving my thoughts on the movie. I don't know if that's going to end up being a solo one, or I have talked to Godzilla Fan Freaks, and he and I may do a collab video on that. Let me know how you guys would like it. If we do a collab, I'm not sure if it'll be uploaded on my channel or his, but that will be, something to look forward to. I'm not 100% sure though if it is gonna be something that him and I will be able to, get together and do a collab on, though, just because of our work schedules and whatnot. So we'll have to see how that goes. But even if I don't do a collab with him, I'll at least try and make a video to give my thoughts on the film. But I thought that this would be a good segue into it. As many of you may know, I've already ranked all the Godzilla films, or at least at that point there were 31 Godzilla films up to that date, because it was prior to Godzilla King of the Monsters coming out in 2019. It was my first ever YouTube video. So a little more rough around the edges, I guess you would say. I've gotten a little bit more used to doing this stuff here. Now, and the other thing with that one as well is it didn't include any of the anime films. It was only the live action movies, and that's really all I'm going to stick with. And because to me those are sort of the mainstay movies anyway. So for here again, like I said, eight King Kong films up to date. And please keep in mind, I do not dislike any of these movies. I like them all. It's just some I have lower down on the list and others I have higher up. And also for my list, I don't do that. I know it's been kind of popular nowadays to do that tier ranking thing that you can go onto the site and make that tier list. That I'm not going to do, because I would rather just do the standard ranking system of like what would be, in this case, 8 films, 8, 7, 6, etc., etc. That to me is a more standard way to rank anyway, so I prefer not to do the tier ranking system. And also with this, I do need you guys to keep in mind, again, I know many of you do know already, but I don't have the ability to actually show clips on my videos, so these will be, I use PowerPoint and make videos, this way, and so it's more of like a what I call, or at least how I refer to it anyways, the podcast-ish style. So so just keep that in mind. And again, this is just my, that's why I rank it like this, ranking the King Kong films from my least favorite to my favorite, meaning this is not best, worst to best or any of that. This is just my own personal sentiment, how I like them. And I do have weird tastes, so be forewarned there. If you've seen my ranking of the Godzilla films, I'm sure you're already aware of that. But let's go ahead, though, with all that aside, let's jump into this bad boy and get this party started. Okay, number 8, Kong Skull Island. Again, this is at the bottom of the list for me. I don't dislike the film. I just don't prefer it as much as the other King Kong films. To me anyways, I thought the story was kind of weak on this. It had a lot of cool action, a lot of cool, monster kaiju fights and whatnot. And the cast for what it was, especially Samuel L. Jackson, et cetera, et cetera, it was entertaining. But it just was one though that I don't have as much watchability, at least for my preference, anyways, as far as the King Kong films have gone. I've really only seen this movie, once or twice, and but I mean, it does have a good cast. Again, Samuel L. Jackson, Tom Hiddleston, John Goodman, John C. Riley. Not so much thrilled with Brie Larson, but that's a different story altogether. But anyway, though, I mean, so it had a good cast, but I don't know. I just thought the focus was more on the action than the story part, but it was definitely enjoyable. So, I mean, that just kind of gives my own sentiments on it. Like I said, I don't have a lot of experience with this film. So, let's go ahead and move along. Okay, next up on the list, number seven, King Kong 2005. I'm sure that this one will be kind of controversial because a lot of people really love this movie. Again, like I said, I do enjoy all of these films, but just for me, though, this movie it just felt like it was way too long and drawn out. It was over 3 hours long. It took it just took forever to really get things going. I felt, I felt like the scenes on the ship, at the beginning part of the movie, were just too long and drawn out, and had some strange sequences too, like the whole slow motion typing in Skull Island. I just found that a little bit odd. To be honest with you. But at the same time, once they did reach Skull Island, it did really pick up, and then definitely the best parts in the movie for me. Of course, my favorite scene, and I do want to also forewarn as well, just in case I do mention anything in any of these movies, please be forewarned of any spoilers. I should have mentioned that previously, but just kind of thinking about it now. So, like I said, be forewarned in case you haven't seen all these films. But yeah, the fight with the three V-Rexes, that Kong had, that was definitely for me my favorite scene in the film. I know for a lot of people they felt that way. That dinosaur stampede scene was probably my second favorite part of the film. Stuff like that I really, really enjoyed. It was cool to see Peter Jackson, uh, pay homage, I should say, to a deleted scene from the original film with that spider pit sequence. That was done really well. It was very creepy, you know. So the stuff on Skull Island, I really, really did enjoy. Naomi Watts did a good job as Ann Darrow. I still prefer Fay Ray's portrayal. I know it was kind of two different takes on it. Um, Sorry, just having my coffee as I go here. Um, I know a lot of people complain Fay Wray was just kind of scared and screaming the whole time, but that's kind of what they were going for. In this film, they made it more where Anne had a connection with Kong, which almost to me was a nod to the '76 film where Dwan, played by Jessica Lange, was more sympathetic. But I just like I said, I enjoy it, but it was just too long and drawn out, and there were certain scenes that I just didn't really care for. When they were back in New York, and they had that whole like ice ring sequence, that was a little much for me, to be honest with you. But I mean, I did enjoy it. Like I said, it's just not the top, the cream of the crop on the list for me. So let's go ahead though and move along from there. Next up, number six, Son of Kong. I know this one is kind of mixed for people. Personally, I enjoy it. I like that it was a continuation from the original film. This time, mainly focusing on Robert Armstrong's character of Carl Denham. And his sort of, I don't know if I want to say like a redemption story, but but still pretty cool though, I think, anyway. So Helen Mack did a good job in the film, as well as this sort of quasi love interest, I guess you would say. She was a fun character to watch, and certainly more sympathetic to Kong's son, who I believe is usually referred to as Kiko. um, so not in the film itself, but in just noting it. That's what he was basically known as. But yeah, otherwise called Little Kong, though. So, and he was really cool to watch. I liked Little Kong a lot. Honestly, he was kind of this playful little smaller version of Kong with the albino fur, and but he was willing to protect his friends, Carl and LaBelle, uh, when they were in danger from that giant bear and other beasts and dinosaurs on the island. He would jump into their rescue. So I definitely enjoyed it. I know a lot of people say it was a big step down from the original film and the budget was much smaller. But again, though, I personally do like it. So that's just my own sentiment on it anyways. So, but I've always, like I said, I've always enjoyed Son of Kong. So let's go ahead though and move along from there. Oh, and this movie, by the way, was released also in 1933, so I should be including the years on the movie. So, Kong Skull Island was, of course, 2017, and of course, you had King Kong 2005, now Son of Kong here, which was released in 1933. So, the same year as the original film. Next up, I guess again, another kind of controversial pick for me here. Number five, King Kong Lives, which this film came out in 1986. So it was a follow-up to the 1976 remake of King Kong, obviously taking place 10 years later. Again, I know that this film is pretty largely panned by fans and critics, but for me, I've always really liked it a lot. I first saw it on TNT long time ago. I think it was around 1991. They had like a triple lineup of King Kong movies. They had the original 1933 King Kong, then they had King Kong Lives, and then they finished it off with Son of Kong. So I kind of get what they were going for when they did that sort of triple threat lineup with those films, and I appreciated it. But that was my first time seeing it, and of course I recorded it on VHS, and I've just watched it ever so much ever since I was a little kid. So I've always really enjoyed it. I like that they, brought Kong back to life. They used the artificial heart to give him a transplant, if you will, and of course the blood transfusion when, that he was ended up needing, and then of course they were worried they couldn't do so, but then they found, or it was discovered that there was a female version of King Kong known as Lady Kong, and the university that was keeping Kong, was able to purchase her from the man played by Brian Kerwin, his character Hank Mitchell. So they purchased him from her, and of course the surgeon operating on the main star of the movie, Linda Hamilton. So she, and she did a pretty good job in the movie. She still kind of seemed like she was in a bit of Sarah Connor mode because this film only came out 2 years after the Terminator. But I do really like her character in the film, honestly. And of course, Kong himself was the main attraction, and this time he was almost like the full-on protagonist, and it had a lot of cool elements. It had the military trying to stop him, so him battling them felt very reminiscent of a Godzilla film, in that respect. But of course, this time though, you feel much more sympathetic towards Kong and kind of rooting against the military, rooting for Kong in this sense here. And I really enjoyed it. It had a lot of good sequences. It did portray some stereotypes, but still was really enjoyable to watch, and I always felt like I was rooting for Kong pretty much the whole time. And, it did kind of have it had towards the end, a very, sad finish with the way Kong ended off, but ending up after his final battle with the military, getting to see, after Lady Kong gave birth to his son, then he got to see and hold his son before he died, and that was a very touching scene. I always thought it always brings a tear to my eye, to be perfectly honest with you. And then of course they ended off with the preserve that Lady Kong and the son of Kong were brought to basically live out the rest of their lives there in peace. So at least had a more of an uplifting touch at the very end part with that. So again, a film that I've always enjoyed personally. I know a lot of people don't like it because it did have a lot of cheesy elements to it, but again, I like it. So let's go ahead and carry along from there. Number 4, King Kong Escapes. And this is the second of the two Toho-made King Kong films, following up from King Kong versus Godzilla. This one came out in 1967. I've really, really loved this film ever since I first saw it when I was a kid. Again, King Kong kind of portrayed as the protagonist character here. Of course, you've got the evil human antagonist, Doctor Who, not the Doctor Who that you're thinking of, but the Toho version of Doctor Who, a maniacal madman who walks around with a black cape. But anybody that can walk around with a cape on, that they're a badass. um, and of course, he created his own robotic doppelganger of Kong, that being Mechani Kong, sometimes referred to as Mecha Kong or Mecha King Kong, but usually referred to as Mechani Kong. That's the way that I tend to go with as well. I think it has the best ring to it anyway. Trying to dig for Element X, was sort of that main plot point of the movie, and then the Mechani Kong couldn't handle the radiation from it, so Doctor Who captured the real Kong to dig it out. But eventually, the mind control device that he was sort of using on Kong was able to break free of, and of course escape. Ends up in Tokyo. Doctor Who tries to track him down, uses Mechani Kong. They got a cool little tuffle that they get into, a little bit of fisticuffs, ending up both of them climbing up Tokyo Tower, and just sort of a malfunction ends up ending off that fight where Mechani Kong just sort of gets electrocuted towards the top of the tower and falls off and busts into a million pieces. So a little bit of an anticlimactic finish to that fight, but I still really enjoyed it anyway. And of course, too, as well noted, Mechani Kong was the sort of precursor to Mecha Godzilla, because doing that sort of robotic doppelganger of Kong gave Toho the idea to do so as well with their own monster in Godzilla, and that's basically how we ended up getting Mecha Godzilla from there. So that's definitely a cool thing to note. Again, though, this is a film that I really, really do love a lot. So now with that, we are at the top 3 here, so let me go ahead and jump into it. Number 3, King Kong versus Godzilla. This film was released in 1962. This brought together, of course, that iconic showdown between these, two of the most famous monsters of all time here. Originally, the pitch for this film, that Toho had was to do, or it was really Willis O'Brien, RKO. Originally, their pitch was to do a King Kong versus Frankenstein movie. After Toho purchased the rights, however, it ended up being, it's kind of a long, complicated story behind all that. Other people have kind of gone over it better than I really would be able to. But that was sort of the main gist of it. But it got reworked, and Toho decided to use their own giant monster, and of course that being Godzilla. So the film got reworked into that, and elements of it were still kept in there, but kind of altered. Hence why that whole, if any of you are familiar with the film, the whole premise that Kong gets energy and power from taking in electricity. That element would have originally been meant for the Frankenstein monster, but got reworked with this film and instead gave Kong the extra energy. Um, and of course, it was really an essential plot point because it really allowed him to be able to go toe to toe. As Mickey would say, he can't go toe to toe with him. He's too tough. Sorry about that. I tend to do voices sometimes like that. But anyways, yeah, that's kind of how it went. So because you kind of noticed during the fight scene, it was much more of a one-sided battle until Kong got that sort of power-up boost, and then became much more of an even fight. And of course, too, they had to scale up Kong to be almost the same size as Godzilla. Of course, Godzilla in the Showa era was 50 meters tall, and they note Kong here is 45 meters, so almost the same height. But again, a film that I love. It's in my top 10 favorite Godzilla films of all time. If any of you have watched along, that you do know that as well. And again, it's a film that I really, really love a lot. So with that, we are down to the last two here. Let's swing it over to it. Number 2, King Kong 1976. So again, this is the 76 remake of Kong. I happen to really, really love this film. Again, this one's a little bit mixed. Some people really like it. Other people are not so crazy about it. Of course, I know sort of the big standing point of this film is that there weren't dinosaurs in it. But just because of the sort of technology that they were using, they used a lot of the suitmation for the effects for Kong. That was most of the most of the work done for Kong in the film, with Rick Baker's work designing the suit and then of course acting in it as Kong. So a very well noted point here. So if they had to use dinosaurs, I believe they said Dino De Laurentiis had said that it wasn't going to look the best having to do those sort of effects, so sort of a different way that they had to approach it. Obviously, they didn't want Kong to go without fighting anything in the movies. That's why they ended up using that giant snake, which I do have to admit did not look the greatest. As a kid, though, never really bothered me. But of course, when you get older, you notice things. I still like that fight, though, to be honest with you, that he had with the snake. It was cool, seeing them tussle, and then of course the finish of the fight with Kong ripping the snake's jaw open, that famous jaw ripping, which Kong seems to love to do quite often. And it was done in a pretty bloody manner, so it was really, really cool to watch. I always liked it. And again, you felt a lot of sympathy for Kong here as well. They really gave him a lot of emotions. Yeah, did it have some creepy elements with the way he acted with Jessica Lange's character, Dwan? Yes. Again, I didn't really pick up on it too much when I was younger, but of course you can see a lot of the sexualized elements of it when you're older. But still, nonetheless, I happen to, just getting past that part, I really love it. They made it a modernized setting. This was in the 70s, and they built it around the oil crisis of the time, with the, fake oil company Petrox looking for oil on Kong's Island here. Which Jeff Bridges, who's in the film, is brilliant in it. Plays Jack Prescott. He refers to it as the landing point. Was it the landing point of the beach of the skull? I believe is how he calls it. The island of the skull, but so it's never officially called Skull Island, but it is pretty cool, and the way he kind of words it up, piercing the white veil when he was sort of reciting that epilogue when he was telling the crew about the island and the existence of Kong. It was really, really cool. It gave me, what I felt a good build up. The sort of human protagonist played by Charles Grodin in the movie, is again just this very sleazy businessman, working for the Petrox Oil Corporation, and really just concerned about his own well-being and filling his own pockets here. And after the mission to find the oil on the island failed, then he decides to capture Kong instead, to use him as a sort of promotional mascot for the company. So an interesting idea, but cool nonetheless. There's a lot of beautiful shots in the film as well, and then of course the final scene taking place on the World Trade Center this time instead of the Empire State Building. Which of course, is still kind of sad to see, because the World Trade Center is not there anymore, the Twin Towers anyway. But at the time they were newly built, and they were, I don't know if they were the tallest buildings in the world at the time. I know that they were the tallest in New York, of course. But that's kind of what they wanted to go for there. And it was a really cool scene, a very brutal, final showdown at the top of the World Trade Center, with the now used helicopters with those miniguns attached to them. Very, very brutal scene, and again a scene that really is heart wrenching, brings tears to your eyes. At least it did for me anyway. So again, a film that I really loved. So with that though, that kind of takes us down to the final one on the list, the number one film for me. Again, just my personal favorite of all time. I know a lot of people will agree on this, but again, this whole list was just my personal sentiment. But I'm sure if you're watching along, you know what it already is. But without further ado, here we are. And of course, number one. King Kong, the original 1933 classic. Again, I do know for many people this is their favorite of the King Kong films. It certainly is for me, and it's also just films in general. This is my second favorite movie of all time, behind Destroy All Monsters is actually my number one favorite movie of all time. And if you've seen my ranking the Godzilla films, you already do know that. Plus, I made a video just kind of discussing Destroy All Monsters as well. So, but yes, that is my number one. Just again, personally, just my favorites. This is nothing, like I said, nothing worse to best or anything, just my personal sentiment. But King Kong is my second favorite film of all time, and again, my favorite King Kong film of all time. I love the pacing of this. Again, done in 1933, but the effects were just mind blowing. Especially at the time, very innovative, using the stop motion technology, which you had seen a little bit of. Willis O'Brien worked on previous films like The Lost World, the silent era film, and whatnot. But Marion C. Cooper's idea for this film was brought to life with working with RKO, and of course the effects master Willis O'Brien, who of course was a big inspiration to Ray Harryhausen. I love a lot of Ray Harryhausen's films. The sort of the mastermind with the stop motion technology, but the granddaddy of them all, I say, is Willis O'Brien. So just absolutely phenomenal. Again, great pacing in the film. I love the way it starts off. You're in Depression era New York, but Carl Denham, played by Robert Armstrong, wants to try and make this film. He's got the image for. He has the map for Skull Island, which later in Son of Kong they go into how he came to be in possession of that map. So that was sort of an interesting follow-up with that, but he's heard of the legends of King Kong and wants to go there and make a film. So very, very awesome to see that. And of course, he needed the damsel in distress and finds Fay Wray's character, Ann Darrow, and recruits her. And of course, the journey to the island, the some of the crew members, well, namely Jack Driscoll, played by Bruce Cabot, not the overall not the kindest to Anne, at the beginning. But again, too, with a lot of the stuff that's transpires in the movie, it is a product of its time. Again, it was made in 1933, so you kind of have to go off of that logic there. But of course, though, it does bloom into a romantic relationship between Jack and Anne. And then, of course, once it gets to Skull Island, really picks up, when the natives capture Anne, when the crew isn't watching at night, and bring her for that sort of sacrifice, that wedding sacrifice to Kong. And then you see the unveiling of him done very well. I love the roar, these sort of lion and tiger roars that they use, that they combine together, and I think played them backwards to make his roar was really awesome. And then of course, just the environment on Skull Island, this sort of prehistoric sort of environment. Dinosaurs were found to be alive and dwelling on Skull Island. And just a lot of great elements there when the crew goes looking for Anne and has to tussle with dinosaurs trying to find her in possession, in Kong's possession. That scene on the log is always epic with Kong with the crew members. And then, of course, you got the first time we ever see the skull crawler, the original version anyway, crawling up the wall when Jack has to cut the vine that it was crawling on to get it to fall down to the basin area there. And of course, that was sort of a leftover beast from that whole spider pit sequence, which was cut in the film. But then you got Kong's epic battle with the T-Rex, which is still my out of the Kong battles, in these versions of Kong's films, these versions of King Kong, I should say, that's still my favorite. I know a lot of people will prefer the '05 version, but just for me, this was just such an iconic fight and one that I grew up watching. I just always loved this battle with the T-Rex there, and then of course Kong's epic finish, the first time ever doing the jaw busting. So very awesome. And of course he fights other beasts along the way. That I think is a plesiosaur, that sort of snake-like dinosaur, which wasn't actually a snake, but it, but that fight that he had when he reaches Skull Mountain there, and of course he reaches that sort of ledge area on Skull Mountain and fights that pterodactyl or pteranodon to save Anne again. Again, a little bit of creepy elements when he's messing with Anne there, which was a little risque in 1933 especially, but still so much awesome stuff going on. And then of course, when Jack rescues Anne and Kong pursues, and then Carl Denham ends up kidnapping Kong and bringing him back to New York, and you get the final, that third act, final climax of the film, and of course the epic showdown atop the Empire State Building for that final conflict, and the planes ending up taking him down, and then that very iconic line at the end that Carl Denham says, it wasn't the planes that got him, was beauty killed the beast. So just so much about this film that I really, really love. Again, I can spend all day talking about all these movies. But obviously for time constraints wise, I'm trying to not go too crazy. I do apologize if I've ran on a little bit, but, again, just kind of wanted to go over some of my takes, and elements from the films and what I loved about them and whatnot. So, but again, that pretty much runs through my list. So, with that, so, as you can see now, this does pretty much take us to the end of the video. Again, the original, King Kong is my personal favorite of all the King Kong films. Again, once Godzilla vs. Kong comes out, we'll see where that falls on the list. I doubt it's. I mean, I can't say for sure. I'm pretty certain it's not going to overtake the number one spot, but we'll see. Where it does fall. I'm definitely very excited for it. Very hyped. So I can't wait to see it. I do have to work during the week, so I probably won't be able to see it till the weekend. But try to avoid watching any reviews or anything just because I want to go into it with an open mind. I've watched a bunch of the trailers, but just kind of leaving it at that and want to, see for myself once I'm able to actually watch it. I don't have HBO Max, and plus a film like this to me anyways needs to be seen in the theater, so that's what my friends and I plan to do. And like I said, I'll plan to make a video. Either I'll do that collab, or if not, I'll just do something on my own and give my own personal thoughts and sentiments on the movie. But again, leading up to it, I just wanted to kind of showcase and rank the King Kong films just by my personal sentiment. Again, it's not worst to best or anything. It's just how I personally like them. But if you guys did watch along and you enjoyed it, I definitely appreciate you sticking with me. I'm sorry I always tend to ramble on. Just kind of how it goes for me. Again, I could talk about these films all day, so trying to contain myself as best as I can anyway. But with that, though, everybody, if you are looking forward to Godzilla vs. Kong, I hope you guys enjoy the film. I know I'm really excited for it. And otherwise, with this video, I would like to thank you so much for watching. If you would like to subscribe, please feel free to do so. If you would like to like and or comment on any of my videos, please feel free to do so as well. And just remember, until next time, ladies and gentlemen, you be good to yourselves, and sayonara.